It's just $300,000. Mum, don't make this difficult, he said. I poured his coffee and pictured a door he didn't know existed. By sundown, my accounts were empty, because I emptied them. By midnight, so was my house. The next morning, he found only an envelope, and a stranger watching him read it. He thought he'd cornered me. He didn't see the trap door. My name is Margaret Doyle, but most just call me Maggie. I am 62 years old. My husband, Frank, passed 3 years ago, leaving me alone in this quiet house in Port Townsend, Washington. I live an organized life. My counters are clean. My bills are paid on the 4th of every month, and my garden is weeded every Saturday. I live a calm, measured existence. At least, I did until this morning. It was a Tuesday. The doorbell rang. Not once, but 3, 4, 5 times in a row, the chime echoing aggressively through the hall. The sound was impatient, demanding. I didn't have time to get up from the kitchen table before I heard the scrape of a key in the lock, a key I never should have given him. My son, Evan, breezed past me in the foyer. He didn't wipe his feet, tracking wet leaves onto the runner I'd just cleaned. He always moves like he owns the space he's in, especially when it belongs to someone else. He didn't stop for a greeting, just headed straight for the kitchen where I sat with my morning tea. He carried himself with a frantic energy that set my teeth on edge. He tossed a thick brown envelope onto my polished oak table. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. Alyssa's debt, he announced. He didn't sit. He paced by the sink. It's $300,000. It's due today. I stopped, my hand frozen around my mug. I looked at the envelope, then at him. He is 38 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a panicked teenager caught in a lie. 300,000. I repeated. It was not a question. Yes. Mom. Before 5 p.m. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he uses when he wants to appear distressed. You have to transfer it. These aren't nice people. They're dangerous. I watched him. My stillness always unnerved him. I picked up the kettle from the stove, poured more hot water over the tea bag in my mug, and listened to the silence stretch. I did not offer him any. Something was wrong, beyond the obvious demand for a sum of money that would cripple me. His words sounded rehearsed, the lines learned from a bad movie. He was wearing an expensive cologne, something musky and heavy that I didn't recognize, not the clean soap scent his wife, Alyssa, usually bought him. I looked past him, through the kitchen window, at my driveway. His usual battered sedan wasn't there. Instead, a gleaming black rented SUV sat by the curb. It was too new, too clean, too anonymous. This is serious. Mom. He pushed, his voice rising, cracking on the last word. They know where you live. I didn't answer immediately. I was processing the cologne and the SUV. He mistook my silence for hesitation, or perhaps weakness. He stopped pacing and leaned his palms flat on the table, invading my space. Look, what else are you even living for? He snapped. The sudden venom in his voice made the air go cold. You're just sitting on all that money Dad left. What good is it doing in a bank? I need it. Your family needs it. Alyssa needs it. What else am I living for? The words hung in the air, acidic and sharp. I looked at the small, framed photo of Frank on the mantel, then back at the son Frank had always tried too hard to save from himself. I took a slow sip of my tea. The steam warmed my face, but my hands were ice. "All right. Evan," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I will transfer the money." Relief washed over his face, so fast it was almost ugly. He hadn't expected it to be that easy. He visibly deflated, the manufactured panic dissolving. "You have the details?" I asked, gesturing to the envelope. He pushed it toward me. "It's all in there. The wiring info." I opened the clasp and pulled out a single document. My eyes scanned the lines, past the intimidating figures. I burned the recipient's name into my memory, North Coast Funding, LLC. "Before 5, he repeated. He was already pulling his keys from his pocket, his victory secured. "I heard you," I said. "Before 5. He gave me a tight, insincere hug on his way out, the smell of that strange perfume clinging to my sweater. He was gone as quickly as he arrived, slamming the front door behind him. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the expensive rental SUV peel out onto the street. The house was silent again, but the calm was broken, shattered. I washed my mug, dried it, and placed it back on the hook. I wiped the mud tracks from the runner. I put the single envelope into my apron pocket. Then, I walked to the heavy oak desk in my study. I did not look at the phone. I did not turn on the computer. I opened the bottom left drawer, the one that sticks, beneath the files for taxes and the house deed. Taped to the very back of the drawer, hidden from sight, was a single, flat, steel-colored key. It was not for a door in this house. It was not for a safe deposit box. It was for a plan I had made years ago, hoping I would never need it. Evan thought he had until 5 o'clock. "You want fast, I'm faster." I did not call the bank. My fingers were steady on the phone. I called Ruth Calder. Ruth is 64, 2 years older than me, and spent 30 years of her life as a United States postal inspector. She sees the patterns in fraud the way I see the patterns in a quilt. Now, she runs a private consultancy from her home, fueled by black coffee and a deep-seated distrust of easy money. She answered on the second ring. "Maggie," she said, her voice gravelly. "This isn't our usual Tuesday coffee call. I need information. Ruth. Fast." I read the name aloud from the document. North Coast Funding, LLC. I heard the rapid tapping of her keyboard before she even replied. "Give me 10 minutes." The line clicked. I did not wait by the phone. I went to my closet. I pulled down the 2 suitcases I'd stored there after Frank's death. Ruth called back in 8 minutes. "It's a shell. Maggie. Registered 6 weeks ago in Tacoma. The address is a virtual mail drop. It just changed ownership 3 days ago." "It's for Alyssa," I said, testing the lie. "Her debt." "No, it isn't." Ruth snapped. "I pulled the filing. You sent me that picture of the contract. The loan agreement is in Evan's name, and Evan's name only. That signature for Alyssa. It's a forgery. A bad one. It's a digital scan pasted onto the line." The air left my lungs, but I pulled it back in. Cold. "What else?" "There's more. You gave him power of attorney after Frank died." "Right. The limited one for medical decisions." "Yes." "He used it. 18 months ago. He used it to open a secondary checking account tied to your main savings, using your social security number. It looks like he's been testing the permissions, seeing what alerts you get and what you ignore. He's been planning to access your assets for a while." "Maggie." He hadn't been panicked. He had been performing. Thank you, Ruth. I'm moving now. Where are you going? The bank, then the lawyer, then I'm gone. I need you to be the trustee. Is the plan still active? A beat of silence. Juniper Ridge Trust, she said, naming the entity we'd designed years ago as a hypothetical. It's active. I'm the trustee. Effective whenever you say. Effective now, I said, and hung up. I didn't take my sedan. I took the old pickup Frank had kept, the one I paid for in cash, at the bank. I didn't wait in line. I went straight to the branch manager, Mrs. Allister, a woman I'd sent Christmas cards to for 20 years. I am executing a trust transfer. Marjorie, I said. I slid the paperwork across her desk. All of it. Immediately. I watched the screen as she typed. I watched my life savings, the money from the sale of our first home, Frank's life insurance, all of it drain from the Port Townsend local bank. It moved in a single, silent, digital stream to the Mesa Desert Credit Union in New Mexico. The account wasn't under my name. It was held by the Juniper Ridge Trust. I need to cancel all paper statements, Marjorie, effective immediately. And I need you to activate a high-level fraud alert across all 3 credit bureaus. She looked at me, her eyes full of questions I would not answer. It's done. Maggie. The old account is empty. One more thing, I said. I need a receipt. I need an official receipt showing a failed wire transfer of $0 to North Coast Funding LLC. She paused. A $0 transfer. A blocked transfer. A failed attempt. I need a piece of paper that says I tried to send them nothing, and it was successful. She understood. She printed the receipt. My next stop was Kendall Shaw's office, 3 blocks over. Kendall is young, sharp, and specialized in estate planning, which is a polite way of saying he protects parents from their children. He made his move, I said as I sat down. Kendall nodded grimly and pulled my file. Let's revoke the old power of attorney. We signed the new, comprehensive power of attorney, naming Ruth Calder. We signed the revocation of all previous documents, specifically naming Evan. We updated my living will and the full will, disinheriting him entirely. The house, I said. My last worry. He can't touch it, Kendall said, anticipating me. He thinks you own this house. You don't. Doyle Home LLC owns it. You are the sole director. Frank was smart when he set that up. Evan has no claim on the property. I drove home. The clock on the dash read 3:45 p.m. Evan's deadline was breathing down my neck. I walked into the kitchen. I took a clean white envelope from the desk drawer. I folded 3 items and placed them inside. First, the official, notarized revocation of his power of attorney. Second, the bank receipt, showing the wire transfer to North Coast Funding LLC for the sum of $0.00. Third, I went to the mantel. I took the framed photo from our last Christmas together, before Frank got sick. Evan was on the end, smiling, his arm around Alyssa. I took the scissors from the utility drawer. I made one clean cut, slicing him neatly away from the rest of the family. I put that small, smiling cutout of my son into the envelope with the other papers. I sealed it. I placed it in the center of the table. The lock clicked shut at 4:15 p.m. Evan had 45 minutes. I turned the deadbolt on the door of the house I had shared with his father, the house I had raised him in. I did not look back. I walked to the old pickup truck in the garage, the one Frank had loved. It was paid for in cash, registered to the LLC, and completely off Evan's radar. I started the engine, the low rumble a comforting, solid sound in the quiet afternoon. I backed out of the driveway just as the sun began to cast long, watery shadows across the neat lawns of Port Townsend. I did not take the highway. I avoided the main arteries, the I-5 corridor, and the ferries. I took the winding state roads that cut east, through the dense green of the Olympic Peninsula. I drove for 2 hours until I reached a small, nameless town. I stopped at a gas station, paying cash for a full tank. Inside, I bought a $20 burner phone. Back in the truck, I powered down my smartphone. I removed the SIM card and snapped the small chip in two. I activated the burner. I also activated a second device, an old iPad mini I'd tucked into the hollowed-out base of a large, fake silk orchid. I had left that orchid on the kitchen counter. I turned on its Find My Location, an electronic beacon pinning me to my empty house. Let them track the orchid. I drove east for hours, crossing into Idaho and then swinging back south. I reached Spokane International Airport just after midnight. I parked the truck in the long-term economy lot. It would be safe there. I walked into the terminal, avoiding the glowing kiosks. At the main ticket counter, I paid cash for the next flight heading south. It happened to be a red-eye to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I bought the ticket, passed through the quiet security checkpoint, and left the state of Washington behind. The desert air was thin and cold when I landed. I took a shuttle, paid for in cash, the 100 miles north to Santa Fe. My friend Leonore was waiting. We met 12 years ago at a craft fair in Arizona. She is a potter, a woman who understands the value of silence and patience. Her studio is a small adobe building behind her house, smelling of clay and pinon smoke. She offered it to me, no questions asked. I was unpacking when the burner phone vibrated. It was a text from Ruth. "He found the package. Call me." I called. "He arrived at 5:10? Ruth said, her voice crisp and low. He stormed up the walk. I was parked across the street, just having dinner, watching. I pictured Evan, frantic, realizing his 5 p.m. deadline had passed. He used his key. 10 seconds later, he came back out. He had the envelope. He tore it open right there on your porch. I closed my eyes. He saw the $0 receipt first. He just stared at it. Then the revocation. Then, Ruth paused. He saw the photo. He crumpled. Maggie. Not in sadness, in pure rage. He started screaming. He called your phone. Must have been 20 times, leaving the most vicious messages. Then he called me. What did he say? He demanded to know where you were. He said you were stealing from him. And then he said, "You tell her not to make me do something bad. You tell her she won't like what happens next." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Did he stay? No. He tore out of there. But someone else came. 20 minutes later. A dark van. No logo. Temporary plates. It parked across from your house. Just sat there. Watched the dark windows for 20 minutes. Then it drove off, heading toward the highway. So, the dangerous people were real after all. They just weren't after Alyssa. They were after Evan, and he had tried to offer me as collateral. I hung up. I looked at my new life, contained in 2 suitcases. I had my clothes, my medication, my mini sewing machine, and a new, clean notebook. I set up my laptop and connected to the private, encrypted network Ruth had established. I activated the feed from the tiny camera I'd hidden in the wall socket, the one aimed at the kitchen. The kitchen was empty. The fake orchid sat on the counter, broadcasting its false location. I sat on the small cot. The studio was quiet, the only sound the faint hiss of the desert wind. I opened my new notebook to the first page. I wrote a single sentence. Freedom sounds like silence. Ruth did not sleep. While I was in the air, she was in the deep digital trenches. North Coast Funding LLC was not just a shell, it was the tip of a spear. It's a network. Maggie, she said on a secure call the next morning. It's not just Evan, it's a whole ecosystem. They find adult children who are deeply in debt, desperate ones. Then they coach them. They teach them how to leverage their parents' assets, usually the family home. I sat on the small cot, the clay-scented air of the studio suddenly feeling thin. They set up these fake escrow companies. Ruth continued, her voice tight with professional anger. The son or daughter demands a rescue loan from the parents. If the parent pays, the network takes a huge percentage. If the parent refuses, like you did, they move to phase 2. They use the child's leverage like that old power of attorney Evan had to file fraudulent liens or attempt to take out loans against the property. They try to steal the house. They're preying on parents. They're weaponizing shame. Maggie. And one name keeps popping up in the metadata. Brenner Cole. He was investigated 2 years ago for some crypto-lithium mining scam down in Nevada. Charges were dropped. Lack of evidence. But he's dirty. He specializes in money laundering. This is his new venture. While she dug into Brenner Cole, I asked her to look into Evan's own finances. The picture she painted was of a man drowning. The advertising company he'd tried to launch, Harbour and Hearth Kitchens, hadn't just failed, it had collapsed. He'd lost a major contract, then tried to make it all back by investing in high-risk stock options. He lost everything. He'd been pledging company assets, things that weren't even his, to stay afloat. He wasn't just in debt. He was facing lawsuits. Then Ruth found the email. It was in a server backup she'd accessed, sent 3 weeks ago from Evan's personal account to an encrypted address associated with Brenner Cole. The subject line was collateral. The email was short. We can use my mother's house. She won't understand the paperwork. She's old. She's not savvy. She's not savvy. The phrase was like a slap. He hadn't seen me as his mother. He had seen me as an untapped resource, a not savvy old woman whose nest egg was just waiting to be cracked. That evening, the burner phone rang. It was an Idaho number. A woman was crying, her voice small and terrified. Mrs. Doyle, is it really you? Alyssa. My stomach twisted. He told me you vanished. He said you took all the money and left the country. She sobbed. I didn't know what to do. I took the kids. We're in Boise, at my sister's. Alyssa, breathe. Tell me what happened. There was no debt. Maggie, she whispered, the words tumbling out. There was no $300,000, not for me. He made me sign blank papers. He said it was for a business loan, to save the company. He said if I didn't, we'd lose the house, the kids. He yelled. He's been yelling so much. He had been performing for me, but he had been terrorizing his wife. My babies, she cried. He's going to find us. He said if I ever left, Maggie, I'm so scared for my children. Listen to me. Alyssa, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through her panic. You are in Boise. You are safe. He is in Washington, and he is distracted. No one will touch those children. Do you hear me? No one. I gave her Ruth's number. Give her everything you have, every paper you signed. After I hung up, I called Ruth back. She's out. She has the kids. This changes things. It does. Ruth agreed. I'm calling in a favor. I have an old friend at the State Department of Justice. We are opening an official file on financial exploitation and fraud. We're flagging your social security number, Evans, and every transaction tied to Doyle Home LLC. The first night, I saw the van. It was just a feeling. I looked out the studio's small window toward the quiet gravel road. A dark van, a panel van with no markings, was parked just beyond the range of Leonore's porch light. Its plates were temporary. It sat there for an hour, engine off. The second night, it returned. It parked closer. I called the local Santa Fe police, reported a suspicious vehicle. By the time the patrol car cruised by, the van was gone. They were looking for me. Evan's rage had turned into Brenna Cole's hunt. They were tracking the old iPad in my kitchen, but their network must have had other resources. They were closing in. I sat in the dark studio. I thought about the email she's not savvy. I thought about the van parked just yards away. I had run to be safe. But there was no safety in hiding. There was only waiting to be found. I picked up the burner phone. Ruth, I said. They're here? They're in Santa Fe? I'm booking you a flight. Get out of there. No, I said. The decision formed, hard and clear. I'm done running. We're going to fight back. We're going to set a trap. I did not leave Santa Fe immediately. First, we had to invite the hunters to the trap. We hunt them now, I told Ruth. Ruth and Kendall Shaw worked fast. Kendall drafted a formal letter of intent to sell. It was not from me, Margaret Doyle. It was from the legal entity, Doyle Home LLC. He addressed it to a single, high-end commercial real estate broker in Seattle, one notorious for his discretion and his equally notorious inability to keep a secret when a commission was on the line. Brenna Cole's network will be monitoring a distressed seller, Ruth explained. They watch for parents liquidating assets after a threat. They'll see you as weak, trying to sell before they can file a lien. The bait was taken in less than 48 hours. The broker let slip to a private investor group that a prime Port Townsend property was available for a quick, off-market cash sale. A man calling himself Mr. Lane contacted Kendall's office directly. He was aggressive. He wanted a viewing immediately. Kendall played his part. My client's representative is only available for 1 hour this Friday, he said, his voice bored. And we require a sign of good faith. Due to the private nature of the sale, the buyer must present the earnest money deposit at the viewing. It will be held in escrow by my office upon acceptance. There was a pause. That's highly irregular. These are the terms, Kendall replied. They agreed. The arrogance of men who think they are the only predators in the woods is astounding. While the trap was being set in Washington, I had to maintain my cover in New Mexico. I couldn't be a ghost. I took my mini sewing machine, my threads, and my pre-stitched embroidery squares to the Santa Fe rail yard market. I set up a stall between a woman selling turquoise jewelry and a man selling dried chili peppers. I was just another retiree, my hands busy stitching flowers onto linen. It calmed me. Between selling a tea towel and a set of napkins, I used the burner phone's hotspot. I logged into my old bank account. The browser session I had opened at my house had timed out, but the fraud alerts had kept the account locked, not closed. I logged back in. $0. But I checked the transaction history. Evan had been rattling the cage. 3 days after I left, he had tried to transfer $15,000. The bank's system had blocked it, flagged potential fraud. He tried again 2 days later. Blocked. He had tried to pay his phone bill. Blocked. He was locked out. The sight of those failed attempts gave me a cold, hard satisfaction. The real weapon arrived in Boise. Alyssa sent a package to Ruth's secure mail drop. It was a small box of her children's drawings, taped beneath a colourful drawing of a sun. Ruth found a single USB drive. Alyssa had accessed Evan's cloud storage. She had found the screenshots of his encrypted chats with NCF. It was all there. Evan, when do I get the first payment? NCF, when the house is secured? Evan, my wife is getting nervous. I had to force her to sign the blank forms. NCF, keep her quiet. Get the mother's signature or get the house. This was no longer just a financial dispute. This was conspiracy. This was coercion. I'm taking this federal. Maggie, Ruth said, her voice grim. My friend at the DOJ, he's convening the Financial Crimes Task Force. They are very interested in Brenner Cole, and they are very interested in this USB drive. Ruth didn't just give them the information. She sold them on our plan. The task force was tired of Cole slipping through their fingers. They agreed to fund the operation. The earnest money Mr. Lane was expecting. It would be real. A suitcase full of marked, sequential bills supplied by the United States Treasury. Kendall prepared the final piece. If this Mr. Lane tries any other tactic, if he mentions a lien, or if he tries to get you to sign anything other than a purchase offer, I have an emergency injunction ready. He explained. We can file it from a mobile phone and freeze the title instantly. I booked my flight back to Washington. I would not be hiding in the back of the plane. The night before the meeting, I stood in my silent, empty house in Port Townsend. It felt cold, a stage set for a play. I practiced. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. I'm not sure this is the right time to sell. My son always handled these things. What exactly are you proposing? My voice had to be flat. No emotion, no fear, no anger. I would be the not savvy old woman Evan had described. I would be a blank wall for them to throw their words against. I would be the bait. It's all being recorded. Maggie. Ruth's voice came through my earpiece. Audio and video. Washington is a one-party consent state. And you consent. I consent. The feds definitely consent. Let them talk. The air in the house was stale and cold. It was no longer my home. It was a stage. It was just after 6 p.m., and the sun had set, leaving that bruised purple light that Port Townsend gets in the fall. The air was heavy, damp with the smell of low tide and salt. I'd left only one light on the single bulb over the kitchen sink. It cast long, hard shadows. Ruth's voice was a whisper in my ear, fed through a tiny, flesh-coloured earpiece. Team is in place. 2 in the back garden, 1 across the street in the utility van. Kendall is on a live video feed. We are a go. Maggie. I smoothed my apron. My hands were perfectly steady. A car door slammed outside, not the rented SUV Evan had driven, but a heavy, expensive sedan. Headlights swept across my kitchen window. He's on the porch, Ruth murmured. The doorbell rang, just once, calm and professional. I walked to the door and opened it. The man was tall, dressed in an expensive suit that looked too tight for his shoulders. He was all smiles, but his eyes were like two polished stones. He carried a sleek, aluminum briefcase. Mrs. Doyle. A pleasure. I'm Mr. Lane, he said, extending a hand I did not take. You're late, I said, and turned, walking back to the kitchen. He followed me, his cologne filling the hall, much like Evan's, but sharper, with a chemical edge. He placed the briefcase on my kitchen table. The metal clicked against the wood. We can make this very fast. Mrs. Doyle? He said, his smile still fixed. He looked around the empty, dark room with a faint sneer. My client is eager. He's authorized me to finalize the deposit tonight. I looked out the window, into the darkness. I could see the silhouette of a car parked down the street. The dome light was off, but I could feel who was in it. Evan. He was lurking, watching. Too cowardly to be in the room, but too greedy to stay away. You said this was for a sale, I said, turning back to Mr. Lane. I kept my voice reedy, uncertain. He snapped open the briefcase. It was full of cash, stacks and stacks of hundreds, bound in paper. The earnest money, as requested. Of course, he said, pulling out a set of documents. My client is also interested in a more creative solution. A short-term lien. Perhaps it would be much faster. No need to move, no fuss. We just secure his loan against the property. There it was. The real play. Not a purchase, but a theft. I don't know, I said, letting my voice quaver. I was performing. This is all so fast. My son, Evan, he just said this was the best way, for the family. I saw the flicker in Mr. Lane's eyes. The mention of Evan confirmed I was the not-savvy mother. He relaxed. He thought he had me. The front door burst open. Evan stumbled in, his face pale and slick with sweat in the dim light. He couldn't stand waiting. He couldn't trust his new partners, and he couldn't trust me. Just sign it, Mom! He yelled. The word Mom echoed in the empty, hollow house. It sounded obscene. Mr. Lane shot Evan a look of pure venom. He had just lost control of the room. Get in the car. Evan? Mr. Lane hissed. No. She needs to sign. Ruth's voice was in my ear, urgent but calm. The agent is in. He has eyes on the money. The button cam confirms the marked bills are on the table. I looked at Mr. Lane. Who is your client? Who are you? That's not important. Evan snapped. It's just paperwork. Mr. Lane said, pushing the lien document toward me. Brenner wants this done tonight, before the shipment leaves Tacoma. So just sign. He said the name, Brenner, and he'd added the shipment. Ruth's voice was electric. We have it. Maggie. We have it all. Kendall. Trigger it. Now. My earpiece went silent. I looked at the two men in my kitchen, the predator, and the fool who had led him to my door. No, I said, before either of them could react. The back door and the front door exploded inward, the house filled with men in dark vests, shouting. Federal agents, hands on your head, do not move. Mr. Lane was slammed against my kitchen wall before he could even close the briefcase. He was cuffed in seconds, an agent in glasses and a suit, the one who had posed as Mr. Lane's driver, was already sealing the briefcase of marked bills into an evidence bag. Evan just stood in the middle of the floor, his mouth open, his body frozen. He looked from the agents to me. He didn't understand. Then, His panic took over. He grabbed his phone from his pocket, his thumbs fumbling, trying to delete, to erase, to destroy the evidence. A hand, small and strong, closed over his. It was Ruth. She had come in with the last of the agents. "Don't bother, Evan," she said, her voice dripping ice. "I already have a full backup of your iCloud." Evan looked at her, then at me. The realization finally hit him. This wasn't a rescue. It was a reckoning. The chaos of the raid subsided into a cold, bureaucratic efficiency. Agents were tagging the briefcase, talking into their shoulders. Mr. Lane was already gone, hustled out the back door. Evan was left standing in the center of the kitchen, shaking, his hands loose at his sides now that his phone was evidence. An agent with a kind face but hard eyes held him back, separating him from the main scene. Evan's eyes found mine across the room. The fear was gone. It had been replaced by a familiar, ugly resentment. "You did this!" He spat. The accusation was low, trembling with fury. "You disappeared. You set me up. They were going to kill me. Mum, don't you understand that? They were going to kill me." The sound of his voice, using that excuse, finally broke the last thread of pity I had. I walked across the kitchen, stopping just a few feet from him. The kind-faced agent took a half-step back, giving us space. "You chose people who could kill you." "Evan," I said, my voice as cold and flat as the steel key in my drawer. "I chose the law. Those were our choices." "Law?" He laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "I'm your family. I am your family. You're supposed to protect me. Family doesn't use their mother as collateral," I said. The words hit him harder than a slap. He visibly recoiled. "You didn't come to me as family. You came to me as a predator, the same as that man they just dragged out of here. You just thought you had a better chance of success. You thought I was savvy." I saw his father in him then. I saw the 20 years of Frank sighing, pulling out the checkbook. "He just needs a hand up. Maggie. It's the last time. Maggie. He's our son. Maggie." Frank's love had been a bottomless, forgiving ocean, and it had drowned Evan. It had taught him that actions never had consequences, that there was always a safety net, that sorry was just a password for more money. Frank wasn't here to write the check this time. Evan saw the new, hard line in my face. His anger crumbled, replaced by the next tool in his arsenal, the plea. "I just needed a bridge. Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking. He was trying to cry. "Just a bridge to get through this season. The business. I can fix it. I just needed some time. Your bridges are built on other people's bones. Evan," I said. "On Alyssa's, on your children's, and you were about to build one on mine. You don't fix things. You just find new things to break." His face twisted. "The kids. What about the kids? You'd do this to their father. You'd let them see this." A sharp pain went through my chest. My grandchildren. Their innocent faces flashed in my mind. For one terrible second, I almost faltered. I almost saw the terrified little boy he used to be, the one who scraped his knee and cried for me. Then I remembered Alyssa's voice on the phone. He made me sign blank papers. I'm so scared for my children. I wasn't doing this to his children. I was doing this for them. I was ending the cycle. I hardened my gaze. Alyssa took the children. They are safe. They are away from this. Away from you. His eyes widened in betrayal. He finally understood that he had lost everyone, that all his allies were gone. The lead agent, the one who had been at the table, stepped forward. He put a hand on Evan's shoulder. "Mr. Doyle, we need you to come with us. We have some questions for you, as a potential witness in this matter." A witness. The word was a courtesy, a legal stepping stone. Evan wasn't a witness. He was the keystone. He let the agent lead him, numb and unresisting, toward the front door. He didn't look back. Ruth appeared at my side, her hand on my arm. Her grip was firm, grounding. I watched the flashing blue and red lights cut patterns across my lawn as the car door shut on my son. "Don't sign anything, Maggie," Ruth said, her voice quiet but absolute. "Not a retraction, not a statement of forgiveness, not a character reference. Not ever again." The weeks that followed were not filled with quiet relief, but with a cold, grinding procedural rhythm. The federal prosecutor's office moved with terrifying speed. The charges they filed were heavy: adult words conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud, money laundering through a sham escrow, wire fraud, and felony signature forgery. Brenner Cole was arrested in Tacoma, just as he'd been trying to liquidate assets. His arrest was the key that unlocked his digital kingdom. Ruth told me his financials were not a set of books, but a web of shell companies designed to wash money. My house was just one small part of a much larger operation. From her safe house in Boise, Alyssa became a crucial voice. She signed a formal affidavit, a sworn statement that cut Evan's remaining lies to pieces. She testified that she had never incurred a $300,000 debt. She testified that Evan had forced her to sign blank documents under extreme duress, threatening their financial ruin. She described months of psychological manipulation, of his gaslighting, of him telling her she was crazy and forgetful when she questioned the finances. Her statement painted a portrait not of a desperate husband, but of a calculating domestic tyrant. Evan's witness status lasted less than 12 hours. Faced with the marked bills, Mr. Lane's confession, and the USB drive from Alyssa, he was formally charged. His court-appointed lawyer, a harried-looking woman with tired eyes, approached Kendall. They offered a deal. Evan would plead guilty. He would detail the entire Brenner Cole network, testify against everyone involved, and expose the mechanics of the scam. In exchange, he wanted a significantly reduced sentence. But there was one condition. I, his mother, had to cease all cooperation with the prosecution. I had to withdraw my testimony and petition the court for leniency, citing family reconciliation. Kendall presented the offer to me in his office. I didn't hesitate. "No," I said. "Maggie, if you agree, he could get probation. If you don't, he is facing significant time." "He is facing consequences," I corrected. "I will not trade my silence for his freedom, but I have a condition of my own." We sent back a counteroffer. I would not interfere with the prosecution. However, if Evan provided full cooperation, I would not object to any plea deal, provided it included one non-negotiable term: Alyssa and my grandchildren must be legally designated as independent victims of his crimes, eligible for state victim protection funds, and any restraining order she filed must be made permanent. His lawyer, seeing her client's primary leverage evaporate, accepted the terms. Kendall, meanwhile, was building a fortress around me. He filed a permanent protection from exploitation order. It legally barred Evan from ever contacting me regarding money, property, or legal matters for the rest of our lives. Any request, any letter, any phone call would be a violation. Then came the call from my old bank. The manager, Mrs. Allister, sounded humiliated. The internal audit, triggered by my massive withdrawal, had uncovered the secondary account Evan had opened using my old power of attorney. It had been flagged by their system, but a junior manager had manually overridden the alert. The account was now frozen, the bank's apology profuse. But the final nail in Evan's psychological coffin came from the prosecution. They forwarded Kendall the smoking gun email. It wasn't the one about me being not savvy. It was another one, sent from Evan to Brenner just 2 days before he first showed up at my house. Brenner had apparently asked what would happen if I refused the $300,000 demand. Evan's reply was one sentence. "She's soft, don't worry. She's my mother. Just threaten her a little and it's done." She's soft. He had counted on my love as a weakness. He had mistaken my kindness for a structural flaw. The main hearing date was set for 30 days. The system was now on autopilot, grinding toward its inevitable conclusion. Then, late one afternoon, Kendall called me. "You don't have to agree. Maggie. In fact, I strongly advise against it. Agree to what? Evan is requesting a meeting from the correctional facility. He says he needs to see you. Just once. He says it's the last time." The visitation room smelled like bleach and despair. It was a cinder block cube, painted a dull government grey, split in two by a thick pane of glass that was webbed with grime and the ghosts of palm prints. I sat on a hard plastic stool, my bag at my feet. On the other side, Evan picked up the black telephone receiver. He was swimming in a baggy orange jumpsuit. His skin had a waxy, grey pallor, and the skin beneath his eyes was bruised a deep, dark purple. He tried to rest his hands on the narrow metal counter, but I could see the tremor, the tiny, uncontrollable shaking in his fingers that he tried to hide by curling them into fists. He didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at the countertop. "They said you'd come," he finally mumbled, his voice a dry rasp through the receiver. "I'm here?" He tried to smile, a pathetic twisting of his lips. "Mum, I've been talking to my lawyer. I can fix this. I really can. If I show good faith, if I can just make the first restitution payment, they'll lighten the sentence. It's just $100,000. I said nothing. I just watched him. He rushed on, the old, desperate salesman surfacing. "I'll sell the company, Harbour and Hearth. I'll liquidate everything, I swear to God. Mum, I will pay you back every single cent. I just need you to post the interest payment. Please, don't let them send me away." I picked up my own receiver. The plastic was cold and heavy against my ear. "You didn't ask to borrow. Evan, you tried to rob me. You used a fake signature." The mask of the pleading son dissolved. His face hardened. He leaned forward, his eyes suddenly sharp and venomous, his lips almost touching the glass. "You think this is over?" he hissed. "You think you're safe? Brenner Cole is one man. His friends are not all in jail. They know where you live. They know where Alyssa and the kids are hiding. Do you really want to find out what happens when you're all alone and I'm stuck in here?" My hand was steady. I reached into the bag Kendall had cleared with the guards. I pulled out a small black USB drive. I placed it gently on the counter on my side of the glass. Evan stared at it, his brows furrowing in confusion. "That," I said, my voice perfectly level, is a copy of your encrypted chat logs. It has all the wire transfer requests. It has your schedule of meetings with Mr. Lane. And, my favorite part, it has the high-definition audio from my kitchen. The audio where Mr. Lane clearly says Brenner's name and mentions the shipment in Tacoma. The audio that was captured seconds before you burst in and confirmed you were part of the conspiracy. I let the words hang in the stale air. He looked from the small piece of plastic back to my face. The threat in his eyes vanished, replaced by a sudden, hollow blankness. He was empty. You don't need me, Evan, I said, the final, cold truth landing between us. You never needed my money. You needed this. You need consequences. He didn't get angry. He didn't shout. He just broke. He didn't fall. He slid. His body seemed to deflate in the orange jumpsuit, and he slumped sideways off the stool, his head hitting the thick glass with a soft, dull thud. He wasn't unconscious. He was just done. I don't know where to turn back, he whispered, his voice too low for the receiver, his breath fogging the partition. Mum, I don't know how to turn back. I don't know where the turn was. I looked at him, my son, a grey, broken man on the other side of the glass. The little boy I remembered was gone. The con man who had threatened me was gone. All that was left was this empty husk. I stood up. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. He didn't move. I turned and walked to the heavy steel door. It buzzed, a harsh, grating sound, and I pulled it open. I stepped out into the brightly lit, sterile hallway. Ruth was waiting for me, standing by a vending machine. She didn't ask me what happened. She just looked at my face, then fell into step beside me as I walked toward the main exit. Don't look back, Maggie, she said quietly. I didn't. Behind me, I heard the heavy sound of the visitation room door slamming shut, followed by the definitive metallic click of the magnetic lock engaging. It was the sound of the last door closing, the point of no return. The day of the sentencing felt final. The air in the federal courtroom was thin, suffocating, and silent. Brenner Cole, faced with an avalanche of digital evidence, the marked bills, and the full confession of his bagman, Mr. Lane, had already pled guilty weeks ago. He was just a ghost in the room, awaiting the official stamp on his fate. This day was about Evan. My son sat beside his public defender, lost in a suit that was too large, his skin pale, his posture collapsed. His lawyer stood. She tried. She spoke of transactional addiction and compulsive financial behavior. She painted a picture of a man buckling under the immense pressure to provide for his family. A man who was himself a victim of a predatory system. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with eyes that had seen every excuse, held up a single hand, stopping the lawyer mid-sentence. "Counselor," the judge said, her voice cutting through the manufactured sympathy. "Pressure does not excuse fraud. Desperation does not excuse a conspiracy to steal from one's own family. Stick to the facts of the plea agreement. Do not waste the court's time." The lawyer murmured, "Yes, Your Honor," and sat down. Then, Alyssa was invited to speak. She walked to the podium, her hands visibly shaking, but her voice, when it came, was clear. She did not look at Evan. She looked directly at the judge. "He told me I was crazy," she said. Her words measured. "For months. He told me I was hysterical and forgetful when I asked where the money was going. He built a fortress of lies. He used me, and he used his mother. But the worst part, her voice cracked, just once, is that he used his children. He used them as leverage to scare me into silence. She took a deep breath, composing herself. I am choosing to remove my children from that life. I am choosing the truth, no matter how hard it is. She returned to her seat. The prosecutor stood for his final summation. He dimmed the lights. He projected the email onto the large screen at the front of the court, the one Evan had sent to Brenna Cole. The words seemed to glow in the darkness. She's soft. Don't worry. She's my mother. Just threaten her a little, and it's done. A low murmur, a collective gasp, rippled through the gallery. She's soft. It was the sound of a son quantifying his mother's love as a vulnerability, an asset to be leveraged. Evan sank lower in his chair, his face ashen, staring at his own betrayal magnified for the world to see. The state calls Margaret Doyle, the prosecutor said. Kendall had prepared me. I did not have to go to the podium. I stood from my place in the front row. The judge turned her gaze to me. Mrs. Doyle, the court has your written impact statement. It is powerful. Is there anything at all you wish to add? I looked across the room. I looked at the boy I had raised, now a broken man who had tried to sell me for parts. He refused to meet my eyes. Yes, I said. My voice was clear and strong, filling the silence. I just want to say one thing for the record. He was wrong. I am not soft. I paused, and for the first time, Evan's head snapped up, his eyes wide, locking with mine. I said no, and I lived. The sentencing was swift. The judge read the verdicts in a flat monotone. Brenna Cole, as the ringleader, received the maximum. Then she turned to Evan. Based on your plea agreement and your subsequent cooperation, the court accepts the negotiated sentence. She read out the years. It was a significant number. She read the terms of his probation upon release. She read the permanent protection order barring him from any contact with Alyssa or his children. And finally, she read the lifetime protection from exploitation order, barring him from ever contacting me regarding finance, property, or any related matter, ever again. It was finished. I sat in the emptying courtroom until only Ruth and I remained. We walked out into the cold, bright afternoon. I was standing on the top step when they brought him out. 2 marshals, one on each arm, leading him in chains toward the transport van. He must have known I would be there. He stopped, forcing the guards to halt. He searched the small crowd, his eyes frantic and wild. He found me. His mouth opened, as if to say my name. He was looking for something. Absolution forgiveness. An explanation. A last-second rescue. I gave him none of those. I simply stood tall, held his desperate gaze, and gave one, single, sharp nod. It was not a nod of forgiveness. It was a nod of acknowledgement, a nod of finality. His face crumpled. The last bit of fight went out of him. The marshals pulled him forward, and he disappeared into the dark van. The heavy door slammed shut. A police siren wailed in the distance, answered by the sharp, lonely cry of a seagull from the bay. The sounds of the city, indifferent and free. I turned away from the courthouse just as its heavy bronze doors swung closed behind me, the sound of them locking, echoing with a final, booming thud. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are all listening from, So please share your thoughts and tell me your location in the comments below so we can connect. Be sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.